So I'm Maddie Trinder, and I chose to do my lesson for kindergartners. The content area is literacy, also reading and writing, which they all kind of go hand in hand. So my lesson is going to be part of a bigger unit that explores various parts of a book. And what we're going to focus on is plot setting and characters, and then also retelling stories. So they're going to use what they know about plot setting and characters to help them retell a story. So in my lesson, we're going to review these aspects that make up the story. So we're going to have a class discussion on our circle carpet, which is where I plan to do lectures and stuff in my future classroom. I'm going to start the conversation, but I want the students to try and lead it since this is going to be the last or second to last lesson within this whole unit. The students are already familiar with everything, and this is just an assessment, sort of, kind of tying up the bow, finalizing everything. So after that discussion, each of my students are going to choose one of their favorite books that they read this month. In my future classroom, I want students to always be reading, so hopefully they have a couple of different options to choose from before completing this assignment. So they're going to choose a book that they read that month and fill out a story diagram worksheet that's going to push them to identify the plot setting and characters from their own books. So the students are all doing the same assignment, but with different materials with their own books. So if students have any questions throughout the process, they can come and ask me. They're more than welcome to, but I want to encourage them to ask each other, because when students are asking a question and answering a question, both of them are learning in that exchange, and it's beneficial to both students. So after we fill out our story diagrams, we're going to use that to write on Storybird. So this is the technology that I'm using in my lesson. So Storybird, I can't remember if we talked about this in this class or if that was a different class that I talked about this in. But Storybird has all this artwork that you can use to help you retell your story, to help you write a story, but in our case, retelling a story. So you can search what you want, you can write with all these images, and then when students do that and produce their retelling of their story, I totally forgot to mention, when they retell their story, they're going to be challenged to change one aspect. So whether that be the plot or the setting or the characters, they can change more than one thing if they want to, but they're required to change one in this lesson. So once they retell their story and change one aspect, they're going to post it to Storybird, and then in Storybird, you're able to see how many views your book has, how many likes, and then also comments. So they're going to be challenged to comment on 3 of their peers' books. So yeah, and then after that, so that's the assessment portion of my lesson. Their Storybird product will be the assessment, and then for closure and reflection at the very end, they're going to fill out a Google survey, a Google form, where they're going to reflect on the whole lesson, on their work that they put in, and then they're also going to tell me things that they liked about the lesson and things that they didn't like, which will help me as a teacher modify the lesson for future classes or for future. It'll just help me to improve it for the future. And then I also wanted to note that I would also be reflecting, just because I think it's important that the teacher and the students reflect, just to make everything the best that it can be. There's always things that can be made better. I feel like I talked about most things. So the resources, the technology that I'm using, Storybird, it supports student learning because it requires the students to use the prior knowledge of what they know about what makes up a story, so the plot, setting, and characters, to help them retell that story while also pushing them to add their own aspects. So it's not just them like writing on their own. It provides motivation through the illustrations that can also foster creativity, and it's just really fun for the students. So it's not them just writing on their own. It's making it more fun. They're becoming more engaged. And then the template diagram also helps them because it requires them to identify the plot, setting, and characters before just retelling their story. So it helps it to be more organized. And then before using Storybird, we'll watch a tutorial, and I'll go through it with them. But I want my students to be familiar with this. This is not at the beginning of the kindergarten year, so hopefully my students will be using this all year, so they'll already be familiar with it. And I think that's all. I think I talked. Obviously, like I said, this is the end of a unit, so students will understand plot, setting, and characters before we do this lesson. It'll be the last or second to last lesson in our unit, so they will have that understanding. That's why they're leading the discussion at the beginning of this lesson.